I'm Reko Ukko. I'm from Seriously in Helsinki. We have a couple of offices in we have Helsinki and Los Angeles. So today I'm mostly talking about kind of like the very kind of creative aspects of Best Fiends. Like typically when you come to these conferences, there's a lot of like tilt towards the kind of free-to-play monetization and economics and all that kind of stuff. But we do a lot of that stuff as well. We do a lot of like data analysis and all that stuff. But this is more like a creative talk geared towards the kind of narrative aspects of Best Fiends and how we leverage the brand across the different media such as animation and games and so forth and so forth. So I've been a game designer for 15 years. Basically, always just done creative stuff throughout my whole life. I'll talk a bit about how Seriously got started, where we are at the moment, and where we are heading, and this all in the context of the brand. Also, I like that picture is fake. I lost my beard when testing out the Facebook charity features, so yeah, I lost the bet, so then I had to shave. So yeah, this happened. So, so Seriously got started very luxuriously in like 2014. We had a tiny office, and we had some big plans. So our kind of opening thesis was that, like, so what would happen if Walt Disney would found Disney today instead of like back in the 50s? And we kind of believe that he actually would found a game company because like film box office is kind of flatlining for like several years already, and then there is this little device that every one of us has in our pockets. Oh, it might be a newer model, but that's anyway what we all have. And there's a lot of pairs of eyes for mobile these days. So that kind of led up into the creation of Seriously, and the idea that we want to do our own brands, and we want to kind of believe that the biggest brands will emerge from mobile. We're roughly 70 people, Helsinki, Los Angeles, and we're a pretty kind of agile company. We have that kind of great mix of creativity and business development, and there's a ton of experience in IP development within the company already. So our kind of core is that we really like games, but we also believe that the IPs that you create in games can go and extend into something else. So our issue at hand, and this doesn't apply to everyone else, is that we kind of want things to be more than just games. Like it's fine to do great games, but we want something that we can extend. And typically, especially in a lot of mobile games, the issue is that there's really no worlds, there's no characters, they don't really have much depth to it, and what you are kind of giving to the player is just that kind of single game, and that's it. And we want to create games that have a bit more meat in it, that they can be expanded in a fairly easy way, and kind of leverage the best of all the mediums available. So Best Fiends, the story of it starts in a world of minutia. So one day in Green Glades, the ladybugs are ladybugging and the spiders are spidering, and everything is pretty comfortable. And until one day, this giant meteor arcs across the sky, and it carries within itself this strange magical substance. And that substance reigns over minutia, and it kind of affects everyone living there. And ultimately, that meteor smacks right in the flanks of a dormant volcano, now known as Mount Boom. So on the flanks of Mount Boom lives this colony of slugs. There's like millions of them, and they've had kind of like their differences with all the other species in minutia, but it's been kind of like this uneasy coexistence so far. But now the meteor hits there right in the kind of ground zero of Mount Boom, and that power within the meteor unleashes, and it just like affects the slugs. It corrupts them, it grows them, it makes them more ravenous, and they just become hungry for absolutely everything. So this kind of mass of slug army, millions of them, it pours out of the Mount Boom, spread across minutia, and then they take a bite out of pretty much everything just to make sure that it's edible or not. And the other life forms of minutia, they can't do much. They hunker down, they're captured, they run away. in the face of this massive slug army. And then the only thing that remains, after all is said and done, a bunch of these small insects remain. They're mostly the youngest ones, but they're also, because of the subtle influence of the meteor, they're also the smartest ones. And they kind of have to set aside their differences from now, so spiders won't eat the flies and so forth and so forth. They must become friends. And together they have to travel the Mount Boom, rescue their friends, cure the slugs, and right the wrongs. And they must become the best fiends. So they've been on the journey for 3 years, and that is roughly where they are at the moment. So it's a long journey. They are finding their way to Mount Boom. They're getting closer. Maybe there's something happening on the next update already. But this is how it goes. So, Best Fiends, it's a character-focused line matcher puzzler. The line matcher aspect of it is basically the kind of fantasy of the family. Like when players see screenshots of your game, they can already kind of get like what the kind of like, hey, that's a familiar mechanic. That's how we kind of ended up with that. It's been out since late 2014, roughly 2 million daily players, over 100 million revenue. It's a bit over that already. 85 million downloads. 2017 was a really good year for us, and this year is looking like it's going to be even better. And also, just kind of pinging off the previous talks, I think a bit under 60% of our players are female, so that's very kind of evident when we kind of talk with the community and just interact with them and see how they kind of feel about the game and so forth. So it's been interesting. So how do you do narrative on mobile? Certainly you can do like a simulation game like choices on episodes or something. So you are very deliberately taking the stance that we are going to put the player basically as a reader, like you are reading through dialogue and reading through setups and stuff. But obviously, if your game is a puzzle matcher, it makes it a bit more interesting, because naturally when you are about to launch that app and you're gonna decide that, hey, I'm gonna play Best Fiend, so I'm gonna play Candy Crush, the player is already like mentally set in like, if I have 2 minutes, I'm gonna just do puzzle matching and puzzle games. So you can't really do cutscenes, or you can't do like massive amounts of like non-skippable dialogue or anything like that, because you have to be really considerate, like what is the player spending their time on. And I think it has slightly changed over the years, but I still think that we are very much looking into this broad field of players with a massive span of time they can spend or not spend on games. So you still have the people who might be waiting for the bus, they have like minute and a half to play, and you want them have a meaningful session. Then you might have the players who are 30 minutes, or they might have 2 hours of time to play. So you still have to take all of that into consideration, and that in the context that the session always ends up in a place where they feel satisfied that, hey, I've done what I came here to do, and then I can kind of continue. So it's like you kind of need to frame the story. So we do a bit of that framing in the, like I just told you the backstory, but we don't show that much in game. We do refer to it, and we kind of let the imagination run loose for the player, but we don't go into that kind of explicitly long cutscene that I just described. We do it with other ways. And then, well, as mentioned, player expectations on the genre. If it's a puzzle game, well, they want to play puzzle games. And like, you might be surprised, but the audience that plays your game might not be interested in stories at all. So it's like the audience is vast, so you have to check, like, once you release your game and you are doing live ops, you might be interested to see like how your expectation on your player base differs from the actual players who played. But we do hark into narrative stuff in other ways. So this is one example we did last year.
Roger! First day of boot camp! It's finally here!
I know.
It's now!
Attention!
It's fantastic!
Yep.
We are at war with the greatest threat ever to slug kind. The Fiends! These slimeless insects are intent on stopping our domination of minutia. And our only defense is to send wave after wave of you to get pummeled! What are you slugs waiting for? Step right up, boys! Don't be scared!
I got this! I got this!
Move it! Move it!
Yeah! Whoops.
That's the way to do it! Now, some of you might not have what it takes to join my slug army, but you will be recruited anyway, because that's the way my army works. I don't know, but I've been told.
I don't know, but I've been told.
None of us will live to be old.
None of us will live to be old.
Sound off.
Uh-oh.
Sound off. Sound off.
That was close. Ooh. Anybody know who that was?
He's the first of you to fail, but certainly not the last.
Yeah, didn't get his name.
We slugs have never won, and we'll never win a war. Why? Because we're slugs, and we expect you to carry on that fine tradition.
Oh, yeah. Easy peasy. Yes!
No, don't dodge the punches, maggot. That's not how we do things.
Slug, yes, slug! Phew.
Oh, perfect! Congratulations, slugs! It's time for you to get out there and show those fiends what we're made of! And now, for some inspiring words from your commander-in-chief.
Roger, Roger! The Slug King! I heard he eats fiends for breakfast.
This is a day that you'll remember for the rest of your very short lives.
Ha!
Fiends? Slugs, prepare for battle!
Attack! Let's go! Take that!
Yeah, that's gonna sting.
He's gonna need a Band-Aid.
And time to go.
Told you this was a horrible idea.
Huh?
That's just one of the kind of animations we did last year. We have a few more coming this year. But obviously that kind of, well, movies as a format are great for storytelling, as everyone knows, because we control the pacing, the structure is fine and everything, which in games typically means that the player itself is breaking the structure through interaction. So all the beat and the careful timing goes off. But the way we kind of leverage that in the game is that all this stuff we do, all the marketing, all the development in the game, it all kind of ties together. So for example, in Bootcamp's case, like we knew that, well, we want to do something in-game to kind of commemorate this event. So it is an actual location in the world map. There's multiple boot camps all over Minutia because there's a lot of slugs to train. And there's also a special event within the game itself. So there's this group of earthworms who gonna go out commando style to take out these boot camps. And they have the kind of all the regalia of the boot camps, the like dodging stations and everything. But we don't actually do that much of kind of narrative storytelling in game. There's a bit of dialogue here and there going on, but it's not mandatory. And even if the player just looks at a speech bubble here and there, he can kind of learn a bit more about the world itself. And that dialogue also changes depending on your difficulty levels and so forth and so forth. And are you failing or winning? And like there's no time for cutscenes, but we do try to kind of inject that kind of idea for the player that he might want to find out more. You can also view the animation through the event itself, and that actually leads to our YouTube page. We have something like 650,000 subscribers in YouTube, so we should kind of become an influencer at some point. So we'll see. Another way of kind of going about this is this event called Minutia's Most Wanted. So someone within the studio had this idea that we should do some kind of an event in the game where you just run through level nodes and try to catch something. And while it sounded quite nice, I always try to kind of make sure that we kind of push these things as far as they can be. So our biggest market is US, and obviously when you kind of think about bandits, you can kind of tap into a lot of fantasy of the familiar, or what kind of comes to mind when you think about criminals and robbers and stuff like that. So we wanted to put a bit of a kind of Western twist on this, that you actually do get like wanted posters for each of these bandits. They get random names, they get random crimes, they're very kind of socially share-worthy. We don't even have much of a like share options for these, but they keep popping up in Twitter and our Facebook groups. So the thing that happens here is that when you're chasing the bandits, they act depending on who you are actually after. So some of these guys are much bigger criminals, and some of them are just like lowlives. And when you catch them, they actually end up in this thing called the bounty board, which kind of tracks the rewards you are kind of gunning for. But the funny thing is that the bounty board kind of changes like when you go and visit it. If you just have like one slug captured, he's just dissing you and like, hey, I'm innocent, like I don't even have arms, so how could I do any crimes? But then when you start populating your bounty board, it actually turns into this kind of like a jailhouse talk. So when you go in there, you are typically going in there like mid-conversation, so the slugs are talking amongst each other. They refer to themselves as names, and then they can acknowledge that you're here, so we should shush up, we don't want to talk about any plans. And again, they also talk about the world of minutiae, like asking like, so where are you from, and so how did you get caught, and all that stuff. And all of this, like, most of the players won't read this stuff because they just want to play games. But there's a portion who kind of tap into it, like, hey, he mentioned the location, or there's a name I've heard before, or something like that. And there's that amount of players who are then really into the kind of narrative aspects of best fiends. But we don't kind of force feed any of this stuff. So again, like just from a pure game mechanics point of view, you could simply put a chest on a level node and ask the player to chase it. And that's what a lot of games do if you don't really have any kind of characters or character development. But the way we do it is that we always make sure that we imbue the kind of spirit of minutia and the world of minutia into every event we do. So all of these guys are characters, they have backgrounds, they have history, all that kind of stuff. And that helps us when we are dabbling with animation, because we already have a groundwork for this. So there might be a kind of minutia's most wanted related animation popping out maybe this year, but you didn't hear it from me. And scratch that, like, no. So then another aspect we're kind of, I guess, known for is our kind of charity work. And we've done a lot, but I still love this one. So this is from a few years back from the Christmas. So this was called the Race Against Slime. This was the second one. So we work a lot with influencers. We've always done it. And we asked a few influencers to pick their favorite charities, and we integrated those into the game. And as a player, you can kind of pledge yourself to this influencer or the charity, depending on which you view as the more valuable one for you. And then for a number of days, the effort of your gaming will go towards that charity or that YouTuber. And the one who wins gets the most out of the charity pool. And then we actually got Ellen DeGeneres involved as well. So she wanted to propose this challenge that would kind of help everyone. So if all the players who play this event can defeat a total of 1 million or 100 million slugs, then she would double the prize pool of $125,000. So the players ended up doing that, and I think it was Cincinnati Children's Hospital that ended up winning. But it's kind of, we've done a massive amount of charity work in general, and I love this because I've personally done a fair amount of it. But the cool thing is that people love playing games, but it's a great platform for really positive messages as well, like engaging people in charity effects and so forth. So that worked out great. And then the way we kind of communicate with our community and just kind of leverage the brand here and there is that we kind of, it was like, when was it? It was the latest Chinese New Year. It was called the Year of the Dog. So one of our artists just decided that he's going to actually dress up Quincy the Spider as a dog in one of our like update posters. And that was that. We thought that it's a very nice looking poster. We do one for every update. And then within the Best Fiends family community in Facebook, like we started getting signals that people are really liking that. So then we decided that, well, we just need to do like a Fiend style so players can actually get it. We hooked that up with our Best Fiends show, which we have running in YouTube. And that is also accessible through games, so you can access all of our video content through the game and kind of subscribe to the YouTube channel. So we kind of did a full 360 with the messaging that, hey, like Quincy the Beagle is coming, and you can kind of finally get it. And that turned into a whole nother discussion about what kind of styles we're doing in the future, but we'll see. So overall, like 2017 with all these events, so the session lengths increased. So we get roughly around 3 sessions per day. So it's like roughly like 60 minutes of Best Fiends gaming for our players. Also, like they play more levels because obviously there's more event content and stuff. But the gist of it is that like none of these events, they don't exist in a vacuum. So all the characters have history, there's references. This is from the Grandma Slug's Orchard, which is one of the other events, so the earthworms infiltrate that. The Grandma Slug was a big thing during the heydays of the pre-meteor minutia. And this is all part of a bigger world. So this is one of our coffee table books. So naturally, like we've done a lot of this work, and there's no way we can cram all of it into the actual game itself. So it has to wait for other games and other mediums and such. But there's a wealth of options to kind of leverage. Like we have the whole timeline for the like what goes in and out, and a lot of the events kind of jump between the timelines. So a lot of material to work with. So where are we going at the moment? So we have a couple of those animations out. They've racked over 15 million views on YouTube. At the moment, we're looking into stuff like streaming video deals and such. They have gone quite far already. We have Best Fiends Rivals is in soft launch. Our marketing and development it's kind of finally honed in on a very nice kind of path. So we kind of always felt that the kind of traditional user acquisition is a bit of like a sink, like you can just throw like a massive amount of money in there and you are just spending and spending and spending. So we try to do things quite differently. So we are dabbling with stuff like radio play and stuff like that, and so far like the signs have been quite good. But anyway, like our marketing is ROAS positive, and we try to be very kind of responsible with our like money spending and all that stuff. So Rivals is currently in soft launch. This is kind of like a very casual competitive take on puzzle gaming. There's a lot of things that already work really well, like some of the figures are looking really good, and then like there's a few bits we really want to kind of improve, but hopefully we'll get this out like during this year. Thank you very much.
When you just started the game, it wasn't planned as to be so story-driven, right? So at some point you decided that you should include more and more of those, right?
Well, yeah. So that's the crazy bit. Like we were only like 6 people in the beginning, but like a lot of this stuff that you saw is kind of already kind of existed during like the heydays of 2014. So it was kind of like you kind of have to try to think big.
So I mean, yeah. So as an advice for the indie developers and so on, so they should think in advance how to include all of this, because when you if you start adding it afterwards, it wouldn't work so good and so like
yeah.
cool.
So typically, like if you kind of decide 3 years later that we really want to have like a big world and a lot of characters and a lot of stories, you actually have like quite a lot of other stuff you are basically doing during live ops to kind of concentrate on that. So I mean, we always knew that it's a bit of a risk, but then again, this was the focus all the time. So we really we were just like we want to do IPs and we want to make them extendable, and it needs to have that kind of backbone thinking that all IPs have. So we just kind of went for it, even though we knew that even during the first couple of years we probably can't tap into what we've kind of created. So it can feel like it gives you that kind of cold sweat every now and then, and you kind of like, is this going to work? And like, what if all of this is like a wasted time? But it's like now it has made things a lot more easier, like creative-wise, to kind of do this stuff, because we have this kind of groundwork where we can kind of tap to. But it's like the bottom line is that if you're an indie developer, I think stuff like this needs to be your focus from the day one. Like if you are that type of a group of developers who wants to do like IP creation and this stuff. But if you're not, then I'm not sure if I would bother with that, because it's obviously not a passion of you, but it's a passion for us.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Moi. I have a question on how do you integrate the tone of voice of the brand in game? So I can see a lot of screenshots where the characters are joking, there's a lot of sense of humor. Is that a game design topic? Who's creating the story in game, and how do you go about that? Do you have like creative sessions with the team before you go developing, or
yes,
who's running the creative in game?
Yes, very much so. We have Petri Järvelä, who's one of our founders, is the kind of creative chief head honcho, but he's actually he has a lot of other stuff to do. So a lot of it is part of the team stuff. So as I kind of mentioned, like team might have an idea that hey, we want to do this chase thing, but then the team itself kind of comes together and we kind of flesh it out so that it kind of fits the world. And then the dialogue kind of comes from like, so where is this kind of location in Mainyysä? Who are all these characters? What are their kind of relationship to each other? And then it kind of flows from that. The kind of, I would say that the top level of that is the whole, just the kind of creative discussions within the company, because we employ a lot of like writers for the animations. We talk with a lot of, like, for example, I think Stuart Burns wrote the Boot Camp, and he's a Simpsons writer. So we get a lot of input from that kind of LA field of entertainment, because that's where our office is. So it's very much a kind of teamwork thing. But then once you kind of do that groundwork, the voice kind of finds itself amidst that. But we play around with the humor, pop culture references. We kind of laugh about the fact that a lot of these fiends or these insects would actually be enemies if the situation would be different. And there's a lot of players who don't pick on it, but there's a lot who do, and they point out these details to us as well. So it kind of creates that kind of nice engagement.